Let me tell you an easy way to get even more content related to topics discussed on Leading Saints, like how to run a meeting or how to effectively motivate those you lead. We have a core leader community for everyone who donates on a recurring basis. These core leader funds are what helps fund our mission so that we can continue to make remarkable content for all of you. Once you become a recurring donor at leadingsaints.org/donate, you can download the Core Leader Library app, and then you can start watching the Meetings with Saints library. Seriously, check out Stephen Rogelberg's presentation about the science of meetings, and it will change your council meeting experience for the better. Again, help us fund Leading Saints going forward by becoming a core leader, and then jump into the Core Leader Library and enjoy 100 plus hours of additional leadership content. You can go to leadingsaints.org/donate or simply text the word LEAD to 474747. All right, here I am with Kessa Merrill. How are you, Kessa?
I'm doing great. How are you, Kurt?
Very good. And now your dad got you into this. Let's roast him for a minute.
Yes, my dad is a very proud dad, and the second he could, he was like, "I'm going to nominate you for this. I feel like you definitely need to do it." And I didn't think anything would come of it, but here I am.
Well, the stars aligned, and I do get quite a few recommendations for interviews like this, but yours just floated to the top, so here we are. And so is your dad the one that maybe listens to Leading Saints more than you, or do you have any experience with Leading Saints?
Yeah, so I have listened previously, but he's the one that introduced me to it. And so I've listened to several episodes, mainly because of the nature of the callings that I'm in.
Yeah, cool. And he even mentioned that you gave him a kidney, right?
Yes, I did. Oh. So in 2017.
And this is how he thanks you, right?
Yeah, yeah. He thanks me trying to get me to talk about it sometimes.
Wow.
But it was a life-saving transplant, and I was 22 at the time.
Wow. Well, no brainer, right? To keep your dad around a little longer. He can have one of those kidneys, right?
Definitely a no-brainer.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that's awesome. So you currently live in Provo, and maybe just unpack some of your leadership experience. You formerly lived in Arizona. Is that where you grew up? Was Arizona?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Gilbert, Arizona. After I graduated from high school, I moved up to Utah for a little bit, and then I moved back home to do the kidney transplant. I ended up staying at Arizona State. And during that time, I served as Relief Society president in my YSA ward. And then I also worked with the ASU Institute Council. I was the Latter-day Saints Student Association president, and worked with the Interfaith Councils at ASU, which was
really? Wow.
Yeah, I loved it. It was probably the best experience of my entire life. I got to work with the Jewish and Muslim communities and all the different Christian denominations.
Wow. And you said that was an institute role for the...
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I was originally on the Institute Council, and then I got called as the president to serve in that specific capacity. So I was basically the liaison between the Institute and ASU.
Nice. Well, we'll definitely maybe dig around in that experience and see what we learn. So maybe unpack just your time in Arizona. Was it, obviously, especially Gilbert area, very, saturated area with Latter-day Saints. So it maybe has a Wasatch Front feel or a Utah feel when it comes to YSA. Was there any clear differences in the YSA there as you experienced in Utah?
Yeah, I can say in Arizona, the YSA life is very tight knit. I feel in Utah, we're a little more spread out. All the stakes in Arizona, we had activities all the time together. And I stuck with the same ward for a really long time down in there. And it's just a little more tight knit, but Utah's great too. I found great experiences here, but it is a little different because the YSA still are a little more spread out in Arizona, and we band together a lot for our social life.
Nice. So, and in Provo, I mean, you live relatively close. And so, and there's maybe just other social support groups of Latter-day Saints. And so you don't depend on your YSA ward as much.
Yeah, it's just, you find them everywhere. So it's not as much of like, oh, we have to come together and we have to do something. And it's a support system there. Like Utah, it's like, oh, well, most of the time you're meeting members, which there are lots of non-members as well. But yeah.
Yeah. So let's just spend some time with that interfaith experience with the Institute there, being on the Institute Council. If this interview was only about being a leader on an Institute Council, working with interfaith, like what was that experience like? And are there any principles that come to the surface as far as like what really worked in that context?
Yeah, I think so. That calling really stretched me. I was in my senior year at ASU, and I was in the midst of an engagement, which then got broken off. And so like during all of that, I was just working through a lot, but I was able to work with so many different people that ended up blessing my life entirely. Like they changed the trajectory of my life. And especially working with the Institute director there and being able to have experiences that pushed my testimony. The biggest event that I worked with was the Interfaith Harmony Week. And we organized events with about 20 different religions on campus. And every day there were events hosted by them. And so one of the things that I found the most in leadership is organization is super important. And although like sometimes that can be a hard thing for people to realize, like, oh, organization is a part of leadership. We want to like in the church, we want to just follow the Spirit. And sometimes that's what we're taught, is that's how we should lead. But I really found that as we take the time to organize ourselves, have a plan, have direction, that experiences that allow, well, there are experiences that bring about spiritual experiences that are most often more powerful. And sometimes those events didn't even turn out that great. Like nobody showed up. There was like 5 or 6 people. I mean, I'm at ASU. It's a very diverse community, and not a lot of students are religious, but a lot are too. And they're searching and they're looking. But those experiences allowed me to meet so many different people who just wanted to connect. And I think that's a big part of that experience for me.
Yeah. So what were some of the overarching goals of that interfaith effort? Was it just mainly connect with other faiths and get to know them and, you know, build a stronger community, or were there additional goals?
Yeah. So the main goal of the Interfaith Council and the Institute Council was to create safe spaces for all world views and world religions. And that was our main focus, and every event focused on that, to bring students just together so they could talk about these differences that really do end up bringing us together.
Yeah. Awesome. And that was like a first semester or two, and then you moved on from that?
Yeah. So I was with the Institute Council for almost 2 years, but my last year was focused on the interfaith.
Nice. And then tell me about the experience of being called as the Ward Relief Society president in that YSA ward. Had you had much leadership experience before, and did that catch off guard, or were you nervous going into that, or what was that like? Just what do you remember from that initial experience? Yeah,
that getting that calling was the most shocking thing of my entire life. I was 21 at the time. And I really didn't have much direction. I wasn't even going to college much anymore. And I remember just my biggest fear when I got that calling was that I'm really young. There are older sisters in this ward who could do way better at this calling than me.
And when you say older sisters, you're like 28 years old, right?
Right.
Older sisters.
Yeah, not that old at all. But, you know, as a 21-year-old who hadn't experienced much of life, and to be trusted to be able to serve and try and connect with them, it was daunting. But I definitely found, as I planned to go on visits every week, that I was able to connect with those sisters and really develop relationships with them, which a lot of them are still some of my dear friends and connections. And have circled back into my life. I'm 26 now and have been through a lot of different circumstances, and those have all brought me back to them as well.
Nice. So what do you remember just starting that calling as a Ward Relief Society president? What was most difficult? Maybe finding counselors or understanding what you do, or how did you begin to step into that role?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me was just realizing, okay, I can make decisions right now and I can pray about things that the sisters in my ward need. So really leaning into that role of like stewardship of sisters in a wide area of people and many different walks of life all coming together. And so trying to gain a perspective that was different than mine. I was raised in a typical Mormon household and like from pioneer heritage, and I knew not everyone around me had that same experience. And so during that, I was just trying to get my footing of realizing that there are different walks of life, and I love them, and most of them have way better experiences than I do, and have taught me so much about just loving those around me.
Yeah. And was there anything intentional that you did in order to gain that perspective of these, diverse backgrounds?
Yeah. So every week I planned to visit about 6 different sisters. And most of the time I didn't even know them. And I would schedule a time with my presidency. That was the most consistent thing I did as a leader, was visiting. And we would just look through the ward list, try and find someone to go and visit. And, we were sometimes the annoying people showing up on your doorstep, not when you wanted us to show up. But sometimes those conversations at the door or on the driveway ended up being those moments that led to a deeper connection and an understanding of where each sister was at and what they were experiencing in life at that time.
Yeah. So were these visits that you did as like the 3 in the presidency went, or did you pair off? Or
yeah, so we would split 2 and 2. We would usually dedicate one night out of the week and go for like an hour and try and visit several different ones. We would each take a group of names and figure out who to visit.
Yeah. Now, an interesting dynamic that comes to mind, being in a YSA ward, these are individuals who are, that's such a transitional time in life where you don't really know where everybody's at, right? They may be on the ward list, but maybe secretly they hate the church or they're not active, but they, listen to hymns 7 days a week, so walking into that, knocking on the door, did you have a certain agenda planned or like something to say, or how did you approach that when you didn't know really where they were at?
Yeah, honestly, well, we always said a prayer before those visits. Yeah. And most of the time I did not have a specific invitation or anything. I truly just let the conversation guide. And sometimes we never even brought up the church. Like we would just say, hey, like we're your neighbors, or like most of the time we would introduce ourselves as like sisters from the ward or something like that. And sometimes it was met with like, hey, I don't want to see you guys ever again, which is totally fine. Like everyone's in different stages of life. But most of the time we just went by what the Spirit led that conversation to be. Yeah. And those were the most meaningful conversations of my entire life.
Yeah. And so did you get some that were quite cold and just said, hey, get out of here. This is my thing anymore?
Yeah. And, I was glad to know that and have a face with a name, and they knew who I was, and we both were able to respect that and, move forward.
Yeah. I remember several of those instances in past leadership roles I've had, where you just sort of get, they invite you just to leave. Right. And you can walk away like, wow, that was awkward. I wish that didn't happen. But it's one of those things of like, at least down the road, they know that we tried. Right. Yeah. Rather than, I didn't even know who my Relief Society president was, but they knew, even though maybe that's not what they wanted. But who knows, in 20 years, they may think back to that moment being like, you know what, I'm in a really tough spot now. And at least, Kessa tried back then, and I'm maybe going to lean into my current ward.
Yeah.
Going forward.
I've never regretted trying to connect with someone. And I don't think most people do.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else notable or stories or as far as those visits go? I think it seems like such a simple thing, but also very impactful.
Yeah. Mainly just that a lot of those connections ended up coming back into my life years later, which
really?
I had a sister who actually was my visiting teacher at the first time that I moved into the YSA ward. And I was just young and I was so timid and so nervous to go. And so she was my visiting teacher at the time. And then when I got called as the Relief Society president, she ended up moving back into our ward. And she at the time was not active, and I was able to go and visit with her and connect back again. And then later again, our lives crossed paths just a year ago, and we both were at very different points in our lives. And I had graduated from college. I'd moved up to Utah. She was also in Utah. And so that connection just weaved throughout my life. And it became a very beautiful friendship of seeing each other at highs and lows and different circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. Anything else related to your time as a ward relief society president? I know I've got a few principles here you sent me, and we're sort of, threading these through our conversation. Yeah. But anything else from that, just that time serving in that YSA that stands out?
Just that I loved it. And
so people should say yes when they're asked.
If they feel ready and feel comfortable, then yes, they should say yes. It's a beautiful experience.
That's awesome. So then you graduate from ASU, I assume, and then looking for greener pastures, and you head to Utah. Is that?
Yes, I headed to Utah. I worked at BYU for the College of Fine Arts and Communications, and I worked with many students there as they were working on their different careers in public relations. And then I made a career switch and work at a spa as an operations manager now. And during that time, I was called to the Stake Relief Society presidency in my YSA stake. And previously, they've had mainly the young adult advisors or the stake presidency members' wives be in the Stake Relief Society presidency for a YSA stake. And my stake made a change with that about 6 months ago. And I was put in as the first counselor.
Wow.
So I've been serving there.
Did they have a file on you? Like, did they know that, Kessa's been a ward relief society president. Maybe we should consider her as a presidency member? Or what do you remember from that story of being called in?
Well, I did originally serve on the Relief Society board there. I don't really know how they ended up finding me. They found me in my ward somehow. I thought I was flying under the radar. Because I had served a lot before moving up here. And so I was like, I'm going to settle into Utah, and I'm just going to find my friends. And then I got called to the Relief Society board. And shortly after that, I got called as the secretary in the presidency. And from that point, they decided to make the switch to having counselors be the first counselors. And nice. I became very close with the president and just heavily involved in planning activities and different visits. It's been different because it's been during COVID, a different level of serving, especially for YSA. And I really just had to rely on the Spirit to be able to help me to connect with sisters that I don't have opportunities to meet. It's very few and far between right now.
Yeah. And so when you were called in that presidency, all three members of the presidency are young single adults. Is that?
Yeah.
accurate?
So currently the president is a young adult advisor, and then the first and second counselors and the secretary are YSA members.
Okay. So the president currently is, when you say young adult advisor, that means she's married and.
Yeah. So she's actually our stake president's wife.
Okay. Gotcha. And
which is rare too.
Yeah. And so when you were called, so you two, the counselors that are YSAs, you were the first two in that stake who had been YSAs in the Stake Relief Society presidency, right?
Yes, we were. And it was a shock to myself.
Nice. So walking into that role, was that intimidating? I mean, how did you approach it? Was it hard to speak up in meetings because you thought, I'm just a rookie around here, or what do you remember?
Yeah, well, I found myself sitting in a Stake Council, which I had never sat in before. Obviously, I'd sat in a ward council, but not in the same way of, we're dealing with a big group of people, a lot of YSAs, and they all are their own family unit. And so, I've had to speak up many times for maybe groups of the church that are overlooked, who experience hardships day to day. And at first I was really intimidated and I was scared to speak up. But I realized over time that my voice really was needed and that my perspective was needed, and that there was a reason why I was called as a counselor and not as a secretary anymore, that they had made that switch because they needed YSA voices in that council and they needed to hear from us. And the very specific things that we're facing every day.
Yeah. And is there anything else your stake is doing in order to make sure those YSA voices are heard?
Yeah, we actually have now had high council members who are called as their YSAs, and they're called into that as well. A lot of the stake roles are turning into YSA roles. So it's pretty cool.
Nice. So more and more that those YSA voices are heard, and that's a great opportunity for sure. With the the two principles you sent me here, the one is being organized and share responsibility. I don't know if that applies more for your time as the ward relief society president or now, but anything you'd say on the stake level as far as how's that done?
I feel like this is a big part of my stake role. Being a stake leader is different than a ward for sure, as in like you're thinking of a bigger picture, then the wards get to be like, they're on the ground. They're doing the really, really hard work, and the stake is a lot of the support and providing ways for a ward to be successful. And so being organized for the presidency that I'm currently serving in has helped us the most to be able to reach the wards, because our main focus as the Relief Society presidency is to minister to the Relief Society presidencies of the ward. And so meeting those sisters and meeting on their different time frames and YSA life and school schedules and work schedules and dating and everything, like we're hard to reach and we're really busy. And so us being able to split up the responsibilities has allowed us to, one, still live our lives, serve, and also to reach out to people that we would have never reached out to, and to love them in different ways.
Yeah, that's sometimes a tough shift to go from that ward level where you get these one-on-one interactions with so many, and then on the stake level, it's a tough thing to do, for everybody in the stake. So you focus on those ward leaders. Yeah. Is there anything specific you do or routines or to connect with the Ward Relief Society presidencies?
Yeah, we are consistent at texting.
Nice.
We use technology, and honestly, I've sat on way more Zoom than I ever thought I would, but it works. And for young single adults, it helps because we can meet you right where you are. Like when I received my calling as the first counselor, I was out thrifting with my friends, and the stake president.
Okay, you got to explain this term thrifting for us old folks here.
I'm going to find some used clothes, and I'm going to make a really cool outfit out of it. I love it. I do it a lot. I hit up the local GI, Moby Thrift, Thrifthood, all of those. So I was out with my friends, and the stake president texted me, and he's like, "Hey, can I meet with you right now?" And I was like, "Right now?" Like, it's like a Saturday afternoon. I'm like out with my friends, and I was like, "Sure." I'm like, "This is going to be over Zoom, I'm assuming, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I used my phone, and I was actually standing outside of the Provo City Center Temple. The thrift shop is right behind it. And I stood there in the grass on a Zoom call and received that calling and was very shocked. But like, that's one of the ways we've been able to connect with YSAs is like, they're literally in the middle of their lives, but I've been able to have conversations with them just because of technology, which is so cool. And I definitely think is a God-given thing for us when it's used properly.
Yeah, I love that. And so is it mainly just keeping tabs sort of casually through text, or is there like a monthly set Zoom interaction or in-person meeting with every Relief Society president or anything like that?
You know, we keep it real casual. Like,
hey, that's fine. I like that.
We're just checking in, and, you know, we try and reach out to them at least every month, the presidencies, but they also, we try to make them aware that like, we are here to talk whenever. And so the president reaches out to the presidents of the wards, and the first counselor reaches out to the first counselors, and so on. And so that helps just develop that friendship and that relationship, knowing that, oh, there is a resource of someone I can go to if I have a question, or there's a concern in my ward and I need to bounce some ideas off of, or there's a sister that's really struggling and I don't know how to help and I need support. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. Is there some general themes that come to the surface just so that you hear from more YSA Relief Society presidents that would be insightful for a general audience or for other YSAs?
Of like their struggles or just
I mean, what are they interacting with, like with the sisters in their ward, right? Like what are the concerns that a Relief Society president may share with you?
Right. Generally, it always comes back to loneliness. And, you know, being a YSA in this world is really hard. And sometimes there's not as much support, especially if you're living away from your family and you may be facing hardships that you never thought you would. And maybe you took a jump to move away from your family. And I know I personally have felt that moving during COVID and trying to figure out my footing. So that's generally what we are hearing from a Ward Relief Society president of YSAs is how do we but really truly let the sisters know that they are loved and that there is support for them and that they have a savior that loves them.
Yeah. And, you know, naturally, I feel like especially when you hear loneliness, you think, well, let's just make sure we have activities every other day, right? Rather than just Monday, right? Like sometimes we try and kill the loneliness with activities. But I mean, how would you educate us on understanding this YSA loneliness and what's some best practices on approaching that?
Yeah, I think for me, this perspective has shifted over time. Originally, I was like, I want to have activities and I want to go meet people and I want to go do all the different things and I want different opportunities. And as I've grown in the YSA community and changed my perspective a little bit, it's more of I want genuine connections with people and opportunities to talk with them and really understand, to have a place to come and talk about my faith. Because sometimes that can be hard to find and to find a safe space. And so to combat that loneliness is really providing like almost smaller groups, and ministering is a great way of that. It's simpler. It's different than visiting teaching. When I was serving as a Ward Relief Society president, it was visiting teaching at that time. And I love the focus of ministering, that it can be so simple as sending a text message and talking with the sister that you serve with, and trying to find a way that you connect. And maybe you don't, and that's okay. That's why we get to change things up, and we have different ministering events and different assignments. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the last principle you have, and you've sort of talked about this throughout the conversation here, is serve with your eyes wide open and love. Anything else that you'd add to that we've maybe not hit on?
Yeah, I think that going along with that is all of these experiences that I've had as a leader have provided me with opportunities to step outside of my comfort zone. and to really push myself to get to know people I probably never would have talked to. I'm very extroverted, but when it comes to talking about the gospel with people, I tend to retreat, and I have a harder time with it because it is such a personal thing for me. And all of these opportunities allowed me to see people with open eyes and to truly try to understand what they are facing. And most of the time when I went on visits, or I've talked to people, or I've texted, or just met people in my ward, I've realized, they're not that different than me. And we are all really facing a lot of the similar things, especially in the YSA ward or stake. A lot of the challenges we face are similar. And just being able to open my eyes and to serve and to try and love everyone around me has blessed my life immensely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fantastic. Well, anything, I've got one more question for you, but any other point, principle, awesome app or technology you use, anything we're missing that we don't want to leave out in relation to your time serving as a YSA Relief Society president or presidency member?
An awesome app. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, do you use any cool, I don't know. I mean, do you have this cool like TikTok dance that you go have around the YSA? I don't know what you kids are into these days, but
oh my gosh. I mean, any communication app is great. And GroupMe, all of that.
Yep. There's a lot out there.
All. We use it all. WhatsApp.
Yep.
I'm on all of them. So yeah, I think serving with YSA is just to serve with open eyes and to truly just seek to understand and realize that you don't know everything.
Yep.
And you're continuing to learn.
Awesome. Well, my last question for you, Kessa, is just reflecting on these awesome opportunities you've had in YSA wards, serving in the Relief Society and being a leader. How has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
Yeah. I think being a better leader and having the opportunity to be a leader has provided me with opportunities to seek out Christ that I wouldn't have before. And by seeking out Christ, and whether that was institute classes or discussions with the Interfaith Council or one-on-one conversations with the YSA, that I truly was able to come to know Christ. And I know that he walks with me. I know that he's there by my side. I know that he loves everyone that I have had the opportunity to serve, and I also know that he loved me. And all of those things that I know have allowed me to be a better leader and a better disciple. And I hope I get to continue doing that.
Remember to go check out the additional subject libraries in the Core Leader app by becoming a recurring donor at leadingsaints.org/donate, or text the word LEAD to 474747. leadingsaints.org/donate, or text the word LEAD to 474747.
It came as a result of the position of leadership which was imposed upon us by the God of heaven, who brought forth a restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when the declaration was made concerning the only true and living church upon the face of the earth, we were immediately put in a position of loneliness, the loneliness of leadership, from which we cannot shrink nor run away, and to which we must face up with boldness and courage and ability.